From Los Angeles, I'm Eddie Garcia. He's Doug Stolhand. Thanks for joining us for another edition of the Puck Podcast. It is Sunday, October the 26th, 2025. This is the first period of a three-period podcast. Our first period, which some of you might be watching on YouTube, will cover all the news from the past week of the NHL, including an NHL coach getting fired under mysterious circumstances. Second period will be reviewing all the games from the past week in the NHL, and I mean all the games. And in the third period, it's our fan feedback segment. We read listener emails, also have our off-ice report, tell you what's going on in our lives. You can find all three periods on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you get your podcast. If you like what you're seeing, please like and subscribe to the YouTube channel.
The Puck Podcast is the original hockey podcast and has been on the air everywhere since July 22nd of 2006. That is as long as Twitter has existed, Eddie. How about that? We have done at least one show every single week since we launched the show. We cover the entire league, which at the time of the show beginning was just 30 teams. It is now 32, but we cover them all equally. And every game, as Eddie said, will be covered every week. It is the NHL show of record every single Sunday or Monday or whenever you decide to listen. But every week we start off with the biggest story from around the league, wherever it may be. And for that, I turn it back over to my good friend, my co-host, Eddie Garcia.
Thank you, Doug Stolhand. And not a big week of news in the NHL necessarily, but there were some interesting things that did come out, including an assistant coach who was a hot head coaching prospect just this past summer, now out of a job. Assistant coach Mitch Love, relieved of his duties by the Washington Capitals following the conclusion of an NHL investigation into his personal conduct. Love was placed on team-imposed leave back on September 14th, with the Capitals awaiting the league's investigation into allegations related to his personal conduct. The league then released a statement earlier today on Sunday saying, quote, Mitch Love has been relieved of his duties as an assistant coach effective immediately. That was actually a Capital statement, not a league statement. This decision follows the findings of an NHL-led investigation into past allegations. The organization is committed to maintaining the highest standard of conduct and accountability. Mitch Love did have a response, and he said in a release, quote, while I am disappointed by and disagree with the NHL's decision, I respect the process and accept both the league's findings and the Capitals' decision. I will continue to openly cooperate throughout this process. That said, I fully deny the allegations against me and look forward to returning to the sport I love as soon as possible. End quote. So obviously I don't know any of the details about this, have no clue exactly what happened or what the story is behind this, but clearly it was something very serious. The league did apparently its due diligence. I don't know what recourse Mitch Love has to at some point be employed by another team. But certainly it was something serious, and the NHL found enough evidence to decide that he no longer can be employed by the Washington Capitals, or they turned their findings over to the Capitals and they decided he is no longer going to work for us.
Well, no, what happened, the order that I understand it is the NHL did their investigation and they announced earlier today, Sunday, that he was suspended for the rest of the season. Okay. And then the Capitals said, well, then he's fired, because if he can't coach for us and the evidence is damning enough that he's been suspended for the rest of the season, we don't want to continue employing him. So there's no use having a coach that can't coach. And so they fired him, and, it's not worth the PR hit. We talk about it all the time. If you're a good enough player, teams will look the other way for a lot of your behavioral issues. They're not going to do that for coaches. Joe Quenneville was out of the league for 4 years. Now, 3 of them, he was out of the work because of the NHL. But last season, any team could have hired Joe Quenneville. None of them wanted to. It wasn't until the Ducks decided to give him a job that he's back in the league. So Mitch Love is in the same situation, except he does not have Joe Quenneville's track record. He does not have multiple Stanley Cups. He's not the second winningest coach of all time. So he's not going to get the benefit of the doubt, most likely. And he will have to be completely exonerated of all accusations and charges against him, if there are any, for other teams to ever consider hiring him. And that's up to him. to clear his name at this point. He can focus his entire efforts on clearing his name. If he is, as he says, he is innocent of the accusations against him, then it's up to him to clear his name to the satisfaction of the NHL and the NHL clubs. And then they will consider, because as you said, a lot of teams, I think, were considering hiring him. And I'm certain that we know how the professional sports world works enough that this allegation is not new and was probably something that was brought up in the vetting of him as a head coach candidate, and might have been a reason nobody moved forward and decided to hire him or got him into a finalist position. So it looks like for right now, his NHL career is at an end, but we have seen before, we've got 5 players that were cut from their teams and their careers looked like they were at an end, and Carter Hart is back in the league. So if he can clear his name to the satisfaction of the NHL and the clubs, actually to the satisfaction of one club and the NHL, then he will be back in the NHL. Unless he does that, he's out of work.
Well, you mentioned his name as we transition to our next news item. Carter Hart has officially been signed by the Vegas Golden Knights, a 2-year deal worth $4 million. Still not eligible to play for the team until December 1st, and they could actually use him because Adin Hill is now week to week with a lower body injury. But Carter Hart is officially a member of the Vegas Golden Knights, and they will now get him ready to return to action on December 1st.
We saw, I believe it was last week, Adin Hill started a game, left in the first period. Akira Schmid took over. He was then questionable the rest of the week. He comes back, he plays the first period of one game, and now he's out week to week. I don't know whether they are the same injury and he re-injured it, or it's just bad luck and he injured something completely differently. But if it is the same injury, and you know how forthcoming NHL teams are with specifics on injuries, lower body, upper body, that was the old bit we used to do where we just guess the injury and make something up for them. But if it is the same one, you got to question what he was doing back on the ice. If it was that easily re-aggravated. So he's played one period twice in the last 2 weeks and is now out week to week. And as you said, it's down to Akira Schmid to carry the mail for a team that has some lofty aspirations for at least the next month. And then Carter Hart will join the team. And it'll be interesting to see if Akira Schmid plays well in this month, in these weeks to week situation that he's going to be, that Adin Hill is out. What is Carter Hart's role on this team? If Akira Schmid proves himself a capable backup and a spot starter that can come in and win you games, what do you then bench him and say, thanks for everything, now you're on waivers and you're heading to the AHL? I tend to think yes, because that's how cutthroat the Vegas Golden Knights are. They don't care. They absolutely do not care. They will hitchhike, get a ride from someone, and then kill that person and steal their car. That is the mentality they have of thanks for everything, now get out. It is just, they are very cutthroat. And so it'll be interesting to see. If Akira Schmid does not play well, though, it'll make the decision very easy for them when Carter Hart is eligible to play on December 1st.
One other item before we get to some other news of the week. The NHL canceled this Olympic send-off event they had scheduled for February in the New York Islanders arena. And that's where they plan to hold the All-Star Weekend festivities at first. Then they decided, no, we're not going to do that. We will instead do some sort of exhibit, I guess. I don't know what it was going to be, where all the Olympians were going to be there, and we would have some sort of event, and then they would all fly off to Italy. And then there was some, I don't even know if they knew what they were going to do, but there was some sort of a Olympic send-off event they were going to have. And instead of the All-Star game, they were going to have it in New York. But now they decided, you know what, we're not going to do that. And they also announced that the Islanders will have All-Star weekend in 2027. I don't know if they thought this out and then they just decided, you know what, this is a bad idea. What are we doing? But the idea to have this Olympic send-off event on Long Island has been sacked, as they like to say abroad.
Well, there was a discussion in the NHL offices this past week because they were planning quite the gala for the send-off, and then they said we're going to cancel it. And the people that were planning it said, you can't cancel the gala. And they said, but there is a haunted relic in this museum that is killing people. And they said, you can't cancel the gala. It's Jaws, but in a museum. So, and
You know
you're
what's
shaking your head,
unbelievable?
but you
What's
know
unbelievable
exactly
about
what
that?
I'm talking about.
Not only do I know what you were talking about, I was thinking the exact same thing. That
You want to
is,
explain it to our listeners?
there was a movie. I don't remember what it was called.
It was called The Relic.
There you go. That we somehow watched back in our college days. I remember it was Tom Sizemore, I think Penelope Ann Miller.
That is correct.
And it's exactly what you. It was in a museum, and they had somehow unearthed some evil or some creature or something,
Right.
and it was killing people, or there was a threat, and there was a famous line by some bigwig because they said we've got to just like instead of Jaws, we got to close the beach.
Right. Exactly.
We got to close the museum, and the guy said you can't cancel the gala. And so we thought that was hilarious. And anytime there was some sort of a cancellation of something, we brought that out. So yes, some terrible movie. I don't remember anything about it except for that line.
Neither do I.
But the NHL has decided to cancel the gala.
Outrageous. You know who also is not going to the Olympics, maybe potentially? Yuri Slafkovsky. Did you hear that, Eddie?
No. What's the deal with that?
Well, during their game this week against the Vancouver Canucks, the Montreal Canadiens game against the Vancouver Canucks, he was apparently talking some dung. And Kiefer Sherwood said, you keep running your effing mouth and I'll knock you right out of the Olympics. So there you go. That's premeditated now. If Kiefer Sherwood does anything to hurt Slafkovsky, we have it on tape that it's premeditated. The hot mic was caught.
Yeah. Well, one of his teammates may be out of the Olympics, which we'll mention here in just a second as we shift to our injury news from the week. New York Islanders forward Pierre Engvall expected to miss the rest of the season following ankle surgery. Vegas Golden Knights captain Mark Stone's been placed on long-term injured reserve with a wrist injury. Montreal forward Patrick Laine is going to be out 3 to 4 months following core muscle surgery. So his Olympic participation for Finland is now in doubt. Utah forward Alex Kerfoot out 8 to 10 weeks, also core muscle injury. Ricard Raquel, the Penguins, 6 to 8 weeks following surgery to his left hand. Penguins defenseman Caleb Jones going to be out 8 weeks with a lower body injury. Defenseman Hampus Lindholm of Boston placed on injured reserve, undisclosed injury there. Seattle forward Jared McCann on IR with a lower body injury. Nashville defenseman Roman Josi week-to-week upper body injury. And Edmonton forward Kasperi Kapanen also week-to-week. Those are some of the injuries that are going to be longer than a couple of days. You know, sometimes they do say day-to-day and it ends up being more. But those are
week
the
major,
major injury notes from the past week in the NHL.
Well, let's revive the old bit. Hampus Lindholm, they don't tell us. What do you think the injury is, Eddie? Dr. Garcia is reporting for duty. We're not doctors, but we play them on the podcast. We know your recommendation is gumballs for treatment.
Right.
But what is the injury?
Well, his name is Hampus, and it's ironic that his hamstrings are chronically a problem for him. So Hampus has hammy injuries.
I did not. That is not my diagnosis. I got to look at the records. The Bruins were nice enough to send them over.
No, you didn't.
And after I looked at the records, I can conclusively say that he has a dislocated funny bone. And that's going to take some time to heal, unfortunately. Now, we've already started the leeches treatment, and hopefully they do their thing. They suck the poison out of him, but it's going to be a while before Hampus is back on the ice. Of those injuries, I will say this. The Ricard Raquel, I think, is the most devastating. He is one of their best players. I think he was their leading scorer last season. And the Penguins are off to a pretty good start offensively, and he's a big part of that top line with Sidney Crosby. They have good chemistry together. Brian Rust, Ricard Raquel, Sidney Crosby, they're not young, but they are effective. And taking one of those three off, and the guy that's been an effective player to start the season and one of those people that just has unspoken chemistry with Sidney Crosby, is going to hurt the Penguins. Now, you may say, well, the Penguins weren't going to make the playoffs anyway. We don't know who's going to make the playoffs this early in the season. Every team, except for one, is still possibly making it. And I think that the Penguins are certainly. I was talking to a Penguins fan at work, and they were saying, we're doing better than we thought. And I said, because the players aren't tanking. The players are never in on the tank. They want to keep their jobs, and a lot of them are playing for contracts next year. Nobody's going to tank so that some kid can come in there and take their job and knock them out of the roster or something like that. So, and plus they like to win. Players like to win games. They're not just going to go out there and half-ass it. So it is, they've off to a good start, but the Rickard Rakell being out as long as he is, basically for the rest of 2025, is a big loss for the Penguins, and I think will hurt their momentum of a good start so far this season.
Yeah, Mark Stone being out for Vegas is significant, but then again, he's always out for Vegas. They're used to playing without him, unfortunately. So
and they're loaded. They're loaded with talent. They've got obviously Jack Eichel's on a heater starting the season. Mitch Marner now, Pavel Dorofeyev, Ivan Barbashev, William Karlsson. They've got other players that can step up and fill the offensive void. And yeah, as you said, it's not like, oh my God, what do we do with Mark Stone out of the lineup? They know exactly what to do. I think it's more likely that he won't be in the lineup than usual. Now, the usual slurs, innuendos come out about them skirting the salary cap, but we know that is not the case this year. Of course, they could call that the Vegas Golden Knights rule because they were repeated abusers of long-term injured reserve that then benefited in the playoffs, but that is not possible this year. That loophole has been closed. Your playoff roster has to be cap compliant. You cannot work around the rules like they have in the past. So that's not a benefit to them, and they would obviously prefer him to be out there. He's just had some bad injury luck. If we're honest, he's not doing anything illegal. The NHL does not step in early enough to our liking with independent investigations of when a player is actually ready to return to the lineup, but the injuries themselves are legitimate, and it's unfortunate that he's back out of the lineup.
We had 3 players who stepped away from their teams for personal reasons, all returning in some form or another this week. One was a sad story. One is a much happier story. And then the other one we don't really know about. But Seattle defenseman Brandon Montour back on the Kraken after leaving the team to be with his family. He revealed that his older brother Cameron had died after a battle with ALS for several years. So obviously very sad there, and condolences to the Montour family on that one. In better news, Chicago captain Nick Foligno back with the Blackhawks after being away with his young daughter who had heart surgery. The good news there is that she is back home and reportedly is doing well.
That is excellent news.
And also Toronto goaltender Joseph Woll has rejoined the team. He was away for personal reasons. I didn't see any specifics on that, but he is back with the team. They have placed him on injured reserve, and I guess the idea is he hasn't been playing or skating at all, so he's now in his own personal training camp, and right. I guess they're targeting early November for him to return to the team.
Yeah, we don't know why he was away, nor is it really any of our business. If the NHL and the Leafs are satisfied with his reasoning, that's enough. Hopefully, whatever was causing him to be away is resolved positively, and he can give his entire focus to his career and the Leafs season. As you said, they're going to give him I think he's eligible for a conditioning stint if he needed to go down to the AHL and play a game or two to kind of get back into game shape, because as you said, he basically has missed certainly the start of the season and much of the preparation. So I'm not sure if that's only from injury or if it's also eligible for personal reasons, leaving for personal reasons. But yeah, he's going to be eased back into the lineup, and it'll be happy to see him back on the ice, focusing on stopping the puck and helping the Maple Leafs win some games.
We had a trade this week. The Vancouver Canucks acquiring forward Lucas Reichel in a deal with the Chicago Blackhawks in exchange for a 4th-round pick in 2027. Reichel's 23 years old. He had appeared in 5 games for the Blackhawks this season with 4 points. 147 career games, all with Chicago. He had 58 total points. He was a first-round pick of the Blackhawks, 17th overall back in 2020.
Yeah, obviously not working out for Chicago, which is interesting because this is a guy that they drafted, they've developed, he's playing for them, and they're a young team trying to build a young core. And yet they're like, we're willing to give this guy away for a fourth round pick. That's bad asset management. You turn a first round pick into a fourth round pick just 7 years later. So, but they got something for him. And I'm not sure what Vancouver's looking for, but we often see this in the NHL where it's a minor looking move. And you say, man, we mention it on the show, we move on. As I said, we've been the show of record since 2006. You can go back and listen to any week and find out what we had to say about a move when it was made, if at all. But years later, then you're like, man, I can't believe they got that guy for a fourth round pick. So maybe Lucas Reichel with a fresh start gets a new lease on life, new coaching staff, new teammates, and blossoms into the player that had the potential to be drafted in the first round overall. And maybe the Canucks have some found money. And if not, a fourth round pick in not this coming draft, but 2 years, 2 drafts away, is not too steep a price to pay.
And one random shot that I saw to throw out there, NHL Hall of Famer Brendan Shanahan has reportedly got a new job. He is joining the NHL Hockey Operations Department. I don't really know exactly what that is. It's kind of a broad term, but apparently he's now in hockey operations.
I have no idea. I mean, good for him to get a paycheck. I'm sure he'll have a lot of really demanding chores and tasks to do on a daily basis. We know the NHL has a very, I don't know how to phrase it, but other than just the good old boy network. And a lot of players in that front office or in the NHL front offices are former players that either played together or played in the same era and know each other. And I don't think that's a great thing because I think those people tend to have each other's back. And it's more of a protect that core than it is protect the NHL as a whole and the players. So I'm not saying it's a bad hire. I don't even know what he's going to be asked to do. But when I see the list of players that have been built up over the years in the front offices of the NHL, I'd like to see a little bit more outsiders, a little bit more players from different eras, different ilks coming in to play a role.
Anything that I may have missed? Anything slipped through the cracks? It was a slow kind of news week, but is there anything else that you remember that maybe should be included in this first period?
No, absolutely not. We got a lot to get to in the second period. I hope if you are watching here on YouTube, then first of all, please like, subscribe, share, all those things to help the algorithm. That would certainly help us. Leave a comment, even if it's just to say hello and where you're listening from or watching from. But we encourage you to check out the second and third periods as we will have a lot of comments on all 32 teams coming up in the second period. So whoever your favorite team is, we'll be talking about them in the second period. And if you're listening to the podcast, all you need to do is stay right where you are, and we'll be filling your ears with some goodness in the very near future.
That is correct. So yeah, that's going to do it for our first period of the YouTube show. As Doug mentioned, if you like what you're hearing and you're just watching, check out the next 2 periods of the podcast. Search for it, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you're already listening, second and third periods are coming right up. If you are watching on YouTube, I'm Eddie Garcia and he's Doug Stolhand, and we'll talk to you next time with another edition of the Puck Podcast.